Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May Filled with Less show. Today we have a wonderful show planned for you, but first, Molly, I am just still thinking about my walk this morning. It was the most gorgeous morning.
I know, it's a gorgeous day.
Did you get out there yet?
Not yet. I have it planned for 1 o'clock.
Oh, good. Well, then you can't go hiking with me. I was going to invite you to go
hiking. Well, let me think about
Maybe we could do that. But, those mornings where it's so fresh and the green is so green and the sun is coming through the trees, dappled. And then in my neighborhood, we have a big fountain and the water was going. And it's almost like my senses couldn't drink it all in.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that way?
Oh,
like,
totally.
I just want to, hold this.
It's like that warmth to your bones. That's what I feel like that morning. It's like crisp and, especially anywhere that has 4 solid seasons, where you really felt a winter.
Oh, yeah, like we just did.
Yeah, I'm not talking about mild seasons. I'm talking about where you live, where it is hardcore winter. And when that spring hits you and people start eating outside and the markets open up and, you just feel like you go outside without just clenching.
Yeah, you can just let go.
It's so rejuvenating.
Exactly. It just felt so good this morning.
Yeah.
And it made me think about how restorative rest is. Mm-hmm. And I was also listening to a podcast. It was an old one, Live Better. No, I can't remember the name of his podcast, but it's Dr. Rangan Chatterjee out of London. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about rest and the need that we all have to take little breaks through the day and to take breaks in life, whether it's a week, whether it's a month, whether it's a vacation or a sabbatical. And we both have some things coming up this summer, right? What do you have planned?
So, I'm doing quite a bit of exploring and resetting, I hope. Some are more, restorative than others, I think, but all I'm excited about. We just got back from Nashville, actually, taking my daughter. She's having her own adventure there. So we did a quick turnaround just to see where she's going to be staying, dropped her off. And then this week we're heading to a wedding in Arkansas for several days, which will be nice. And then as soon as we get back from that, we're going to Wisconsin. One of our best friends is getting ordained.
Oh, nice.
So we'll be gathering for that. And then in July, it's our 25th anniversary. So we will be getting away. And that one I do plan just to be a time of just downtime and rest. So I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Oh, that'll be lovely. It's so nice to look forward to things.
Oh, I know. When you see things on your calendar that you're just like, oh, I can persevere until
I can make it.
I can make it. So what about you? I think you were telling me you were kind of
I'm
thinking of some ideas.
Different things. Yeah. So I have a friend that I go fly fishing with every year. She used to live here in Valparaiso, and she moved to Syracuse, New York, a few years ago. Nice. So another fishing friend and I are traveling to Syracuse at the end of July.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Never been.
Yeah. It's going to be lovely. She has a friend who has a cabin in the Adirondacks, and we're going to rent it for a few days, nice. And we'll go fishing and hiking, and it'll be lovely.
That does sound lovely.
But what I realize is I need something before the end of July.
Yeah, in May.
Yeah.
Next week.
Exactly. Tomorrow. I need to get away and think and pray and be introspective and be in quiet and be by myself. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us need that just to rejuvenate. And so I'm looking for a place, and I was Googling and asking people on Facebook.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, those are good ideas.
They all had wonderful ideas. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm looking. specifically like for our Midwest people, like where do you go? Because I don't want to spend an entire day traveling there and back because I only have about 3 days.
Yeah, just like a half-day travel, as I think is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I've narrowed it down to a state park, but I'm having a hard time finding accommodations. I found some accommodations in Michigan, but they're over my budget. So yeah, but I think that, golly, even planning to get away can make your shoulders go down and feel some kind of relief.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we were talking earlier, and you had mentioned an analogy that I thought was so powerful. And actually, we brought it up with our members in one of our live calls. And you talked about the importance of pruning.
Yes, yes.
And when you said it, I was like, oh, that's exactly, that image is what I need to help me understand that need to cut back in order to flourish.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
can you say a little bit more what you...
I will. Well, what's funny, Molly, is, you know, in all truth here, when I said the word pruning, I didn't even really know what I meant. It just seemed like the right word to describe what we're doing right now. And it was one of our members, it was Mary, who extrapolated on the pruning and how cutting back allows new growth to come forth. And you and I have both been talking about this ministry, and we're going to talk about what Filled with Less is, because we've really been honing in on this. And we're pruning.
Yeah.
And in a way, it can feel sad, like, oh my gosh, we're going to drop this, we're going to stop that, we're going to rethink this, that, and another. But I think that this ministry in the long run is going to be even better for our stepping back. And I think that's what the pruning is. It's going to be even more beautiful. It's going to have even more flowers.
Yeah.
Right? You know, when you prune a flowering shrub in the next season, it's just has even more, and it's fresh, and it's like new.
Yeah. And what stood out to me was that pruning is not a one and done thing.
Right.
It's something done seasonally. Yeah. You know, and when I think about our ministry, it's been about, you know, over 2 years, and how we've evolved, globally in our communities, and it's actually the perfect time. It makes perfect sense to now, on the other side of some of these things, take a closer look and begin, again, really streamlining, like making sure we're on the same page. Where are we heading? You know, what does this mean to us? And one thing we came up with was a very simple mission statement that I just love.
I do too.
And having a mission statement, we talked about this before, for a ministry, for yourself personally, is so powerful because it helps you pause before saying any kind of a yes to a project, to a commitment, and measuring it against what means the absolute most to you, to make sure that you are heading in that direction and not getting sidetracked.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why we focused on having a personal vision statement with our members last month. And they had the opportunity to submit that vision statement to me so that we could revisit it in a year. And I can see where they're already making decisions that align with where they want to go and say no to the things that don't. And I love that we're modeling that for them. We had to do it out of necessity. But why don't we talk to people about what Filled with Less is, Molly? Because some people may be tuning in and they're like, what? Filled with less? I don't get it.
Yes.
So, let's tell them.
So Filled with Less, actually the less and less began with clutter. That's something that came to my mind when I was decluttering my home. And, you know, that was before we even really started thinking about the ministry. It was just a personal project. And what that less now includes has really expanded to include things like not only less clutter, which is absolutely part of it, less overthinking, less agitating content, less commitments, you know, fewer opinions and judgments, and less striving. It's come to encompass a lot of things. And, you know, when we talked about what our mission statement is, we decided, I mean, even that, like, we wanted that to be filled with less.
Right.
And, you know, we said Filled with Less is a ministry devoted to cultivating health and well-being through the beauty of orthodoxy.
Yes.
And
so simple.
So simple. And I think that what we both found, what we've all found over the last 2 years, is that the combination of high stress and anxiety, plus the isolation born both of the pandemic and of divisiveness, have caused an absolute mental health crisis globally, within our parishes and our communities, our families. I mean, I would venture to say that no one has been left untouched in some way.
Right.
And what we have found is that through the last 2 years, that Orthodoxy has some of the most profound tools for accessing real healing and hope.
Yes.
For those things. And that's what we wanted to touch on. So we are using the tools of Orthodoxy, including things like stillness, prayer, the rhythm, the ritual, to give us a sense of rootedness, and to cut out the things that are really making us just so anxious and overwhelmed.
Yes, and Scripture. God has plenty to say on our health and wellness and how to maintain that. That reminds me of a quote that I read recently, and this was written by a woman who was taking care of her husband who had cancer, and she went to an oncologist, and the oncologist, she took her husband to the oncologist, and the oncologist said, "You need to practice self-care to be the best that you can be for your husband." And I think of how often we talk about self-care and less in people's lives, and stopping the whole societal push for, you need more of this and more of that and more of this and more success and etc. This woman left the oncologist and she said, "I felt like I was prescribed yet another task I resented, yet another obligation I had to fulfill." And she's talking about self-care. What I wanted was for somebody else to volunteer to take care of me. I dutifully went home and Googled, intending to look for those resources. That is what we want to provide through this ministry, those resources, that support, so that your self-care is not just another task. It's something where we want to care for you. Basically, we want to provide for you everything that you need in order to take care of yourself and the other people in your life.
And just the accountability of that. I think that by, my relationship with you, someone who encourages me in this, has made all the difference. I think if I was on my own, I wouldn't have made all of the changes that I have. And recognizing that we do this together, and that's what we want to be, just a voice of calm and gentle encouragement in your ear to keep doing that important inner work for your own healing, so that you can be a source of healing for others.
Yes. So on today's show, you're going to find that this is going to be somewhat of a theme. Under our Peaceful Mind segment, we're going to be talking to Claire McGarry. She's an author who talks about finding peace through tension and grace through learning through Martha and Mary, and you're going to love to hear from her. Then under the Healthy Body segment, we're going to talk about closing the loop on the stress response cycle. And in the Productive Life segment, we're going to be talking about definitions of success. So why don't we jump right to it for the Peaceful Mind segment.
Claire McGarry is the author of Grace in Tension, Discover Peace with Martha and Mary, and the Lenten Family Devotionals, With Our Savior and Abundant Mercy. The founder of Mosaic of Faith, she endeavors to fish for more people to bring to God through her retreats, women's groups, and writing. A regular contributor to Living Faith, Mornings with Jesus, and Catholic Mom, her freelance work has appeared in These Days, The Secret Place, Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and Kevs for Kids. A former lay missionary in Guatemala, she now lives in New Hampshire with her husband and 3 children, and blogs at shiftingmyperspective.com.
Claire, welcome to the Filled with Less show. I'm so glad to see you again.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. I had such a good time talking to you on the Holistic Christian Life podcast, and I just knew that because we talked about peace, that we needed someday to have you on the Filled with Love show under the Peaceful Mind segment. You're a perfect person to talk to.
Well, I'm really honored and excited.
Well, we read your bio, so everyone knows about your book, Grace and Tension. And I guess we were just wanting you to expound on what led you to write this book. What's the background?
Sure. So way back when my kids were very little and there weren't enough hours in the day, and I was stressed beyond belief, and I was having daily meltdowns for a solid week. That Saturday, my husband said, "Go. I've got this. I've got the kids. I've got the house. Just go do what you need to do." So I found myself at this outdoor retreat center called Rolling Ridge Retreat Center in North Andover, Massachusetts. And it has this beautiful outdoor chapel that is surrounded by water. And as I sat there looking at the cross, crying, journaling, praying, crying, journaling, praying for a solid 3 hours, on my way back to my car, I recognized I was filled with peace. And I was also very excited to run back to the life I had just tried to escape from. And that's when I realized everybody needed that time and space with God to empty out and pour out all their stress and tension at his feet and be refilled and rejuvenated by him. But then I realized the average mother in the trenches didn't have that time and space, couldn't create the opportunity. So that's when I felt called to do that for them. So I started running weekend retreats for moms and evening retreats. And I always chose a story from the Bible. And when I chose the story of Martha and Mary, when Jesus comes to their home and they each make different decisions, Mary chooses to be at his feet and listen to all that he has to say. And Martha chooses to serve, but loses her way in the serving and becomes overwhelmed and stressed and filled with tension. Clearly, that really resonated with all the moms as I presented. And I think I presented that retreat 6, 7 times. And every single time, the moms gave me the feedback that it needed to go into a book. And so that has always been my lifelong dream, to be a published author. But in his perfect way and in his perfect timing, he opened door after door after door. And here we are with Grace and Tension, Discover Peace with Martha and Mary.
Oh my goodness, bless you for offering those retreats to mothers.
Yeah, I would have absolutely loved that 10 years ago. That's such a familiar, the crying is very familiar to me.
Yes.
But
and it was,
yeah, go ahead.
It was while writing the book, though, that where before I had felt called to fish for moms to bring to the feet of Jesus. While writing the book, of course, I was writing it during the pandemic, and it wasn't just mothers who were feeling stress and tension. It was everyone on the planet, that I felt that call shift. And I felt God ask me to fish for everybody. Men, women, young, old, parents, no children, doesn't matter, because unfortunately no one escapes stress and tension. So my hope is that even though my ministry began with mothers, I'm really hoping the book resonates with anyone who feels stress and tension.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it does. It's so funny. First of all, you're talking about going away on a retreat.
It's like perfect.
It's perfect, because Molly and I, in our opening, we were just talking about the importance of doing that. And I'm trying to figure out a place to go right now, just for 3 days, just to talk and, to myself and journal and pray, talk to God and get guidance. And I'm sure there will be some tears. There always are when you do this. And then later in our show, we're going to be talking about that stress and what it does to our bodies and how important it is to be able to let that go. And tears, crying is one of those ways.
Yeah, that's very purifying. It's very, It's an additional emptying out, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's a letting go and an emptying out in order to be refilled.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you find that balance? Because I think that Mary Martha tension is so common for so many of us who trying to find that balance between striving and resting, so that we don't, we tend to kind of err on either too extreme on either side. So what did you find while you were writing the book or talking at these retreats or meeting these participants is a way to maybe find that balance?
Yes, and when you were talking about the two extremes, that is how I tend to live my life. Mm-hmm. I swing the pendulum one way and then I swing it back the other way. And obviously the place to be is in the middle, because I believe God calls us to be both Martha and Mary, to develop both aspects of them within ourselves. And so what I did do in the book is I devoted a chapter to each of the common traps that we all fall into. So, for example, to answer your question specifically, one way of finding that balance is defining boundaries. And I think for myself, it was one of the hardest chapters to write because I don't come by boundaries naturally. And I think every scenario has us drawing them in different places. So there isn't a cookie cutter way to draw boundaries. There's not like a step 1, step 2, step 3 that applies to every situation. But that's where time at the feet of Jesus helps, because he does know exactly where to draw the boundaries in each and every scenario. So I do talk about the importance of them, what it looks like when we don't draw them properly, because I think as women of faith, for example, we are inclined to say yes all the time because we believe that we're meant to spend our time here creating his kingdom, and that in order to do that, we need to say yes to all we're being asked to do, when in fact, that isn't the case at all. So I talk about the fact that we all have God-given gifts, and that is where we're called to serve. We're not called to give out of gifts, that we don't possess. And when we try to do that, we rob someone else of their opportunity to shine. And so there is something called the sacred no. And when we use it, we gracefully decline, but we provide an opportunity for other people. So the drawing the boundaries, the deferring to a different season, I equate the visit of Jesus to the home of Martha and Mary as its own individual season. But for example, within that time frame, Martha didn't have to do everything. There were things that could have been postponed. When we're having company over for dinner, we don't have to clean the inside of the oven. We just have to cook in the oven, right? You don't have to always clean the windows when guests are coming, especially if it's at night. They're not even going to see out of the windows. So there are times and places to defer tasks, and they can be deferred to another season. I mean, when you have a nursing baby at home, there are things that are possible to do, and there are things that just need to be postponed until that child is older and you have more space and time. If you have a very demanding project that's going on at work, it may be that you have to trim back some other things, even perhaps in your personal life, if that project is so demanding it's bleeding over a little bit. As long as the boundaries aren't too extreme, that you can defer some tasks. Asking for help is a big one. And for us self-declared Marthas, it is one of the hardest things to do. So if we can look at those who are around us and look at their skills and talents and choose who might be good at what we need to push off or ask for help with, we can be empowering them, like I said, to shine. So asking for help, deferring to another season, drawing healthy boundaries, not needing to do it all right now, asking for help, not getting distracted, going to God to ask Him to define for us what the true priorities are. Sometimes we miscalculate what the priorities really are, and we can get distracted. The more overwhelmed we get, that butterfly that flies by distracts us and gets us off course, and we don't actually accomplish anything. So the primary way is to spend time at His feet asking for help. But there are concrete ways that we ourselves can help ourselves doing some of those things that I said. So I do devote a chapter to the different sources of tension.
Yeah, that's so, one thing you bring up that's so good is the relationship between the first surrendering through that prayer. So we're in a state of listening before we even try to define those boundaries. Because, I think many of us tend to say, just give me a formula, tell me exactly what to do. And out of my own power, I will create this, and it never works. And that quiet time, that stillness, that surrender is where we get our discernment, right? Because like you said, every situation, day to day, it's different. Conversation to conversation, it's different. And there has to be that attentiveness, that listening, just to know from minute to minute what a boundary might look like in that situation.
Right. And I've heard it said, and pardon me for not remembering who said this, but there was someone who said, when I have a busy day, I start with an hour in prayer. When I have a very, very busy day, I start my day with 2 hours in prayer. Mm-hmm. And there's that beauty. God is that master mathematician who can multiply time for us. He multiplies us, He multiplies our energy, and He sort of warps time when we spend time with Him. He manages to do that for us in the day, so that by the end of the day that we've partnered with Him and had Him be our guide, determining the boundaries and what really needs to get done. We look back and we're astounded that we actually accomplished what we did. And then, like the fishes and the loaves, He also gives us excess time that we can gather into our basket and use for ourselves to restore and rejuvenate again.
That's such a good reminder. I really have to remind myself that on mornings when I want to do my usual morning routine and spend time in the Word and prayer, and I minimize it because I think I don't have time. But you're right. There's a gift in being able to persevere and spend that time with the Lord, and He'll multiply it for you.
Yes, and saying all this doesn't mean I've mastered it. Do you know what I mean? It's almost as if God provides me these opportunities to talk about it, so that I can hear myself say it again, so that I'm reminded. Yeah. Because when I follow it, when I do spend time with Him, it does work. It works out beautifully. But like you were saying, Cynthia, the longer my to-do list is, I feel sometimes I shortchange Him. I abbreviate my time with Him, and even my time with Him is me just rattling. It's not me listening and receiving. And so it is a constant battle. Just because He provides us with the answer once doesn't mean we grab it and run and we're good to go. Yeah. We've got to keep going back.
Exactly. You have an acronym, GIFT, the GIFT acronym. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. That was one of those things where I was just, not to overuse the word, but completely gifted with it. I'm an old school writer. So when I have thoughts or ideas, I jot them down on pieces of paper. And as I was doing the outline for the book, I had a 6-foot table and I had all these pieces of paper all over the table. And as I stood over the table, this acronym literally like floated up to me, and it's GIFT, GIFT, and it is actually the steps that for years that God has been leading me through when I bring him my stress and tension, and when I go to him with my ears and my heart wide open, because that's a key point. I'm very good at bringing in my stress and tension. I'm not always good with spending time and getting quiet and being open to what he wants to tell me. But when I do, there is a process, and that first letter for G is gauge or identify what the problem is. I think far too often we label the symptom, and we don't get to the root cause of why we're feeling stress and tension. And we can't fix something if we can't name or identify it. So spending time at his feet, he helps us zero in, engage or identify what the root cause actually is. And once we get to that point, I believe that if it's not going to, stress or tension isn't going to put us in spiritual or mortal danger, I believe he asks us to invite it in. So whatever that stress or tension is, rather than running from it, because I think sometimes when we run from it, it picks up speed in order to catch us. So if we can sit and face it, invite it in, and spend time with it, we loosen our hold on the emotions that surround it. And then they no longer have a hold over us. And the majority of the time, it's our emotions that cloud our ability to see what's really happening. So once we do let go of those emotions, we move on to the F of the word gift, which is filter. We can look at the situation through the filter of God's loving eyes. He looks at everything and sees the good. So when we look through his eyes, we can look at the scenario the way he does, and we can see the good that is within that stress and tension. And once we can see that, he leads us to the T, which is transform. It's usually a change he's calling us to make that will transform that stress and tension into grace and peace. It might be an outward change. We may need to, for example, trim back the extras or draw healthy boundaries or use the sacred no. Or it might be an internal change where we have to change how we're responding to things, because there's always multiple ways to respond to everything. And so once he reveals that to us, he then partners with us so that we can implement that change. And that's what transforms the stress and tension into grace. So it's gauge, invite, filter, transform.
It's wonderful. It's so good. Helpful. It is so helpful. You know, it reminds me recently, I've been, when I have a stress or tension, like you said, instead of trying to run from it, sit with it. And I've just been praying, like, please put the resurrection on this situation. What would that look like through a lens of resurrection? So that if I believe like an ultimate goodness, I believe, that life and goodness is victorious, and being able to say, here's the situation. I can't wait to see what resurrection comes from it. Give me the patience to, sit with it and let it transform me and not run from it. And it's a good analogy to keep in mind throughout that process.
Yeah, that was very beautifully said. Because if we can look at things that way, stress and tension is never going to go away.
Right.
Once we solve one issue, there's another one knocking at the door. So if, like you were saying, if we can look at it with the anticipation of what's the beauty, in your words, what is the resurrection that's going to come from this, then we start welcoming stress and tension in, right? Because we recognize that it's God's invitation to find the gift that he's tucked within it, and we can find it, open it, apply it to our lives. And then the sparkle comes back, so that if we can shift how we look at it, which is my blog, Shifting My Perspective, there, like I said, there's always different ways to look at things, and God's is always through the lens of love. And so if we can anticipate and get excited, we start welcoming that stress and tension, and then it never reaches a peak anymore, does it? Because it reaches a peak when we try to suppress it or run from it or blame others for it, versus welcoming it in to see, again, in your words, what the resurrection may be inside.
Claire, everything that you write and every time I've talked to you, you are so filled with optimism, and you are able to convey a sense of hope to everyone. And I think even those young mothers who are in our audience right now who are crying like you were and are overwhelmed, and then even those who don't have young children at home but are going through the same situations, I really appreciate your beautiful smile and your optimism and your message of hope. And I think that God revealed that GIFT principle to you to share with so many people, and I'm so glad you are. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share it, because I did very much feel called to write this book in hopes that it would help others. But if I'm not able to get the word out, if people don't hear about it, I feel as if I'm not completing that call. So it's opportunities like this that are the answer to that prayer of, how do I now, God, okay, God, I wrote it. Now, how do I tell people about it? So thank you. You're playing a very big part in that.
You are so welcome, Claire. Thank you again for being on with us today, and I pray that you have a blessed day.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
One of the things I loved, Molly, about what she said, and we've talked about it on the show before when we were talking about how to say no and how empowering it is to say no. I love the way that she said the sacred
Yes. Doesn't that change everything?
It
right?
does.
Just how you define it or
It
how
does.
you describe it.
Yeah. And when you use the sacred no, it gives other people an opportunity to shine and to use their God-given gifts. And so often we think we have to do it all.
Yeah.
But I just love the way she said that.
Yeah, that stuck with me too. Yeah, I always try to pull one thing out. You know, we do these interviews, and usually there's something I'll kind of ponder the whole week following. Yeah. And I think that's the one that I was like, the sacred no. I really love that as well.
Yeah. And I feel like I need to put on a sticky note GIFT somewhere to remind me to do like a check.
Yes.
Like when I have a situation come up where, I'm feeling like the tension and what to do about it, or, all the myriad emotions that come in a day, to be able to look at that and do a gut check, GIFT.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really helpful.
Yeah, I do too. I'm going to write it down as well. Yeah, like you said, to just enter into it prayerfully, to really believe that all things are sent by God for our salvation, and this too, give thanks for it, and then, like I said, try to be patient and try to let it transform whatever needs to be transformed in you that day.
Yes, exactly. I love that transformation. It you know what, just reminded me again, like silver in the fire, being able to be molded to what God wants you to be in your life to be, right? It's through the fire.
Right.
That beauty happens.
Yes.
That's
absolutely.
the transformation.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue on with the theme for today in the Healthy Body segment, so let's get right to it. So one of the things that really lit my imagination, was so revealing to me recently, was a podcast interview I did for the Holistic Christian Life podcast. We were talking about the stress response cycle that our body holds. And I never realized this before. The concept is when we have stressors coming at us in our lives, the stressors go away, but our body is still holding on to them. And if we don't do things to actually close that physical cycle, micro stressors or big stressors, whatever they are, can keep happening to us until we overflow. And we break down, or we burn out, or we explode at somebody, or something gives. And it reminded me, and Molly, I don't know, I think I've told you this story. I'm going to tell our audience a story. Because one of the things I learned was that when the body holds the stress, the body has to give out in some way. And that's why stress is so detrimental to our bodies, to our heart condition, to our mental capacity. It raises our blood sugar, it raises our blood pressure. So a few years ago, I was sitting in front of my husband's church. But yes, my husband and I go to two different churches. He likes the Greek, I like the English, what can I say? And I was picking him up after church. And I was sitting, in my car on the street, and I was in a line of cars. And I just happened to glance in my rearview mirror, and this little boy, who's probably 4 years old or so, was playing on the front steps. And I thought, well, that's odd. There's no adult around. And he's playing, he goes down another step. And usually I would have been on my phone or something. Thanks be to God, I'm looking in my rearview mirror for some odd reason. And then I see him kind of disappear. And I'm thinking, and we're on LaSalle Street, which
so busy. Yes,
very busy street for those of you not in Chicago. I see him disappear in between two cars. So I jump out, and I'm thinking, no, this can't be happening. And sure enough, he's going into the street, and cars are coming. And I started running towards him, and I didn't want to call out for him because I didn't know, would he think I'm playing? Would he run away from me?
Yeah.
So I started running after him, and I was jumping up and down for the cars, saying, stop, stop. And I got up to him within a couple feet. He turned around, and honest, Molly, his face looked like an angel.
Oh my gosh.
And at that very moment, the thing that crossed my mind was, how is Demetrius going to know which hospital to find me?
Oh gosh.
And thanks be to God, the cars stopped about 12 inches from his back.
Oh, my heart.
And we're so close, when they plowed into him, they would have plowed into me too. And it was crazy. So I scooped him up at this point and went to the church, asked someone, where's the mother, where's this boy's mother, found her, gave him back to her, told her he ran into traffic, thank you, and everything. And at that point, the threat was gone.
Right.
The situation was over. Mm-hmm. It was safety. Everything was safe at that point, right? But then I collapsed.
Yeah.
Right. The body holds the stress. Mm-hmm. If you ever almost hit an animal or an animal gets scared and they go to the side of the road, you can visibly see them shaking. That's how their body is dealing with the stress that they were under.
Yeah. I had that with my car accident.
Yes.
When it was over, that stressor was it was resolved. But the stress in my neck, the headaches, you could feel your body teeming with it.
Yes. Yes. And there are ways to actually alleviate that stress, which I never knew. There are actually 7 ways. Last, I believe it was fall, the Naglosky sisters came out with a book called Burnout. And they were talking about how stress, microstressors, big stressors, all piling on each other until you can't take it anymore, how that turns into burnout. And I just thought that this was fascinating because I think we're all going through these big things and these little things, but we don't know that there's a way to let them go even when the stressor's gone. So I just want to go over the 7 ways that we can close that physical stress response cycle. Number 1, physical activity. So you can go to the gym, you can dance. I know some people, they'll turn on music in their house and just dance, just that physical release. Something or another, that release, which is the same as your body collapsing or the shaking
Yeah.
that you see a deer doing after it's just, gotten out of the way of your car.
Yeah.
Right? So even some people will stomp or scream or just something to let that out and release that from the body. Another one is creativity. So knitting, painting, maybe you're an iconographer, something where it's using another part of your brain that's going to be able to kick in and override the stress in your frontal lobes.
Okay.
Another one is laughing. And those big belly laughs, like be with somebody who just makes you laugh. Go somewhere to listen to a comedian or watch a show or something that just lets you let go. When you laugh and you really don't want to laugh, or you're afraid that if you're laughing too hard, you look stupid or whatever. You know, that kind of laughter.
That's
is what you're
so
after.
funny, actually, because I just this week, maybe it was last week, I was, you'll go shopping for so long and you're out too long, and then you're just like, it gets like a little panic attack. Like sometimes I just feel like I need to get out of here, and I was starting to feel that. Kind of a little bit of a panic attack, and so I purposely called my friend Jen, who makes me laugh every time, and I was like, just need to hear your voice while I finish this shopping.
Nice.
And she of course made me laugh, and it was exactly what I needed. Like I just needed to, like you said, kind of override that part. So I think that's so fun. It just happened to me. I was like, oh, that's exactly what I knew. She would make me laugh.
Oh, that's
and that
great.
would help me get
like
through.
That.
Yeah.
Golly, can you give me Jen's phone number?
Yes, she's so fun. I should give you all Jen's phone number because she's hilarious.
Not that my friends aren't funny. But
she's pretty funny.
she sounds like the antidote. Another one is crying, which I did that day when I collapsed. I just started unbelievably, sobbing all the way home from Chicago. Physical affection. They found that hugging someone, and it doesn't have to be a romantic thing, a friend, hugging for 20 seconds. Just a solid hug where you're both holding each other tight, heart to heart, so to speak, is healing to the body. I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved that. And the last one is deep breathing. And we talk about deep breathing for so many things. We've talked about it with stress before. But it's interesting after you've had a particularly stressful experience to do a check-in and say, okay, I'm going to do some deep breathing here because my body needs to let this go.
Yeah.
I thought that these were all really good and simple things that anybody can do. And I also wanted to end the segment with this quote by the Nagloski sisters. Wellness is not a state of being, it's a state of action. It is the freedom to oscillate through the cycles of being human. Real-world wellness is messy, complicated, and not always accessible. If you sometimes feel overwhelmed and exhausted, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means you're moving through the process. Grant your body permission to be imperfect and listen to your own experience.
Oh, I love it. I love the idea of moving through the process.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think that is so much of it. Like life is very naturally peaks and valleys. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Just having the right tools to help you as gently as possible move through the process and not get stuck in place.
Yes.
That those things are inevitable. It's not that you're doing it wrong. Yeah. That's part of life. But there are ways that you can, in a more healthy manner, continue to keep moving forward and healing as you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Absolutely. It's so beautiful. So we hope you enjoyed the Healthy Body segment and didn't miss that we didn't have a guest. It was just Molly and I. But sometimes that's when the best conversations happen. So with that, we're going to get on to our Productive Life segment.
So for our Productive Life segment, I actually wanted to have a conversation with Cynthia about a conversation I had with my daughter this weekend. My oldest daughter, we actually moved her to Nashville for the summer. She's having a little adventure of her own. She found housing and a job, and she's just trying to kind of push herself to explore new areas. And one of the things we talked about on the way was success. What does success look like? Because a lot of times, you've seen that illustration of the straight arrow. This is how we view success. It's a straight line. When in reality, it's actually a very twisty, turny road, and it's not linear. Growth is not linear. Healing is not linear. And I think it's really important to shift our perspective on that so that we don't get so discouraged inevitably when we are working towards goals and find ourselves, maybe on track, and then life gets messy, something happens, we get sick, suddenly there's, something happens out of our control within our community or with our families, and now we've relapsed, we have setbacks, we're not keeping up with those habits, and the tendency is to beat ourselves up and think, well, it's a loss.
Right.
So what we want to talk about in terms of maintaining a productive life, we have to have a healthier perspective on success and embrace not only, those steps forward, but also the setbacks.
Exactly. And I think that also relates to our busyness. So success often in America, it looks like busyness. And it reminds me of a study, an Italian study that was done where they created a social media profile. And one person was named Jeff and the other one was named Giovanni. And in this study, Jeff was always posting, not much. Here's what he had for dinner tonight, or, your usual sort of laid back kind of posts. Giovanni was always posting that and actually I can't remember if it's Jeff or Giovanni who was the more laid back person or the more active person, but he was very active. He was accomplishing things and doing things. They asked Americans who they thought was more successful. And Americans immediately thought, oh, the person who was the busiest.
Yeah.
The person who was accomplishing so much. And they asked the Italians who they thought was the most successful, and they chose the person who had leisure time. And so I think that when you're talking about success being not necessarily the straight road, but having all these tributaries, I think of a river heading to the ocean and all these tributaries that also make it to the ocean eventually. It's just sort of a journey of just rolling with this is a season for this, and that's a season for that, and this is an obstacle I have to learn to get over, and while you're learning to get over that obstacle, hey, you're learning something that you can use for another reason down the road or with another obstacle, and it's not just a straight shot, like you're saying. And success is different things to different people. Some people think a lot of money is success. Some people think a big high-powered job and title is success. Some people think having children is success. There are so many different definitions. I think one of the keys too is understanding your own definition of what success means in your life, and not looking at it through the lens of the world,
societal expectations.
People.
And even recently I made that self-care for young adults guide, and one thing I noticed is the tendency to normalize an unhealthy degree of busyness and stress. So this kind of frantic pace where you were always like, okay, I got this to do. You're barely sleeping. That this is like almost becoming like, yep, this is what life is. And it takes a real concerted effort to pull back like that with the leisure and say, no, like all of a successful life, or a growing life, is that balance, right? Of the doing, the white space in your life for deep conversations, for reading a book, for taking a walk, for journaling. That work that we talked about in the Peaceful Mind segment of sitting with the tension, that takes time, and it takes effort. It takes moment-to-moment, present-day living. But you have to break that cycle that we are told that that's a waste of time.
Exactly.
And sometimes that is like those conversations, that is like that is what a beautiful life is. And so not only build it in, but to really find meaning, and everything is usable. So when life happens, you get off track. Let's say, like you had your whole house decluttered, things crept back in. Things were outside of your control. Maybe you inherited some things, and now you're like, oh, now it's filling back up again. Not to feel like I failed.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. There's no failure.
There's no failure.
No failure.
Right.
Yeah. And I know that recently during one of our membership calls, one of our members seemed to have her life in order and everything. Yeah. And then Pascha happened, Holy Week, Pascha, and then things since then. And she was feeling a little dejected, like, wow, I thought I was dialed in on these things, and now I seem to be at loose ends. And we're just saying, honey, it's okay. I mean, this isn't like a check this box off, I'm good, right? Mm-hmm. This is, you're learning something right now. Pay attention. You're learning something right now. You're learning what's really necessary and what isn't.
Yeah.
Maybe you need a shift of focus. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what helps with that is that day-to-day, that's that prayerful surrender, and saying, whatever happens to me today is God's will for me. Mm-hmm. It's my responsibility to show up for my life. And I think that's why we do that. That's why we try. That's why we take our vitamins. That's why we take our walks when we can, do our best to show up, to be receptive, but to trust that those ups and downs and those interruptions are not in vain. Yeah. And to be able to meet those with hope and trust and humility so that we can use them and keep going forward, mm-hmm. right? So it's like that path to salvation, we know our end goal.
Yes.
But we know it's a lot of getting up and stumbling to get there, but at least we're heading toward the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And sin happens.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So, that's just like what we're talking about. So, sin is going to happen after you're baptized, after you're chrismated, after you've accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior. That destination is salvation, but it's not a straight shot. God's going to teach you so many things through circumstances that have happened in your life, and I just think life is a learning process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if you could tell, but this episode of the Filled with Love show is very personal to Molly and I. We've been figuring out a lot of this stuff in our own lives lately. A couple of weeks ago, we had this heart-to-heart about our ministry and what it entails. We've been at it for a couple of years now. It was like a river. And then there were tributaries, and then we got confused and overwhelmed, and we've had to make some tough decisions. I found this quote that I thought was really appropriate. And he says, the truth is, many of the productivity hacks, and this is perfect because we're talking about a productive life segment, right? Many of the productivity hacks that we've learned are a delusion. Time management doesn't mean becoming more productive. It means deciding what to neglect. And once we realize that we can never fit everything in, we get the freedom to prioritize. And I think that's what we've been talking a lot about today, is that freedom to prioritize when you start stepping back and realizing that we're not after perfection, we're on a journey, we're open to God's will, and one of the ways that we've been doing it at Filled with Less is Molly and I are doing some pruning back, like we've talked about pruning in the beginning. One of the ways that you could normally keep in touch with us is through our membership, and you still can, but we will be phasing it out at the end of the year. We've just decided that the membership was something that we no longer had the resources for, that we thought that we would be able to have at this point. And so we're having to prune back a bit. And like one of our members told us the other day, this is where she thinks that our ministry is going to flourish. And we just pray to God that that is exactly what happens. So if you want to join the membership and you haven't yet, you still have 7 months to be with us. And we hope that you do. It's really a wonderful place of growth.
Yeah, it really is. And just thinking about over the last 2 years, that membership through the pandemic was an absolute lifesaver. Like, I will forever be grateful for that season.
Yeah.
And I think, like what you said, it's learning to listen and it's constant shedding, right? It's releasing and understanding that there are seasons for things, and responding to when it's time for a door to close and when it's time to open another door. And so, that's something that we've been doing together, and our members have been doing. It's been very beautiful. So like I said, feel free. We start going through the end of the year, and it is a beautiful community. So we'd love to have you join us. For the last few months here.
Yes. So, and of course, the other way,
is our book club, Filled with Less book club. This time we are reading an excellent book called Things That Matter by Joshua Becker. I've been thoroughly enjoying it, taking pictures, texting it to all these passages to my kids. They're probably like, Mother.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. Joshua Becker
said it. I didn't say it. So good. It's so good. And we're talking about that on Thursday, May 26th at 6 p.m. Central.
Yeah, so that's coming up soon.
For that.
Yep. Yeah, hope you join us. Even if you haven't read the book and you're just now hearing about this and it's before May 26th, just jump into the book club on the Filled with Less website and join us.
Or just pick up the book. Yeah, if you missed the book, if you listen to it afterwards, it's a good book. It's worth reading. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. We're so glad you're with us again today, and that we could come to you this month through all the turmoil and the things that have been happening, and I'm sure it's been going on in your life too. Just that sort of that post-Pascha craziness, because it can be crazy after Pascha. We hope you've got your feet on the ground and your eyes up to the Lord, and we will catch you next month.